An elected politician just called the sight of children wearing ear defenders in classrooms insane.
The sight of children in classes wearing ear defenders. I'm sorry. This is just insane. It's got to stop.
This is Richard Tice, one of the members of Parliament in the UK, and he's claiming that there is a crisis of overdiagnosis of autism and ADHD. He says that teachers want it to stop, and he's proposing cutting support to save money. Also, if you're a late identified autistic adult or ADHDer watching this, I want you to know that your accommodations are valid right up front. The support that you needed as a child was real, and you deserved better than what Richard Tice is proposing for the current generation of young students. Today, we're going to talk about why Richard Tice is dangerously wrong and why his comments reveal something much darker about how our politicians view disabled children. Right, how do we start these things? Oh yeah. Hey friends, I'm Mike, a late identified autistic adult, and nice to meet you if you're new here. Today, what on earth is going on in the UK, guys? Like, really? Because on Monday, Richard Tice, who is the Deputy Leader of Reform UK and MP for Boston and Skegness, he stood at a Westminster press conference and said some things that have absolutely set the autism and ADHD communities on fire, and not in a good way.
What can reform do to tackle what you describe as the colossal overdiagnosis of children with conditions such as ADHD? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, from the experts and the teachers that I've spoken to, and the officers, the best thing to do actually is to push it, almost all of it, back to the schools. The schools know best, the teachers know best.
He also claimed that there is a crisis of overdiagnosis of children with neurodiverse issues, including ADHD and autism. He suggested that we should stop labelling people and just give them a bit of extra support.
And to stop labelling people, just say you need a bit of extra support, you might need a bit of extra time. You've got to the mad situation now where children who don't have any form of label are now starting to feel left out. They're feeling that, in inverted commas, they're the normal minority. This is insane.
And he proposed scrapping annual EHCP reviews, we'll get onto what those are in a bit, to save councils millions of pounds. Within hours, the National Autistic Society, SEND organisations, other MPs, counsellors, teachers and thousands of autistic people and parents responded and pretty much unanimously agreed that Richard Tice was wrong. Today we're going to unpack exactly why the comments are so harmful and why they reveal a profound misunderstanding of autism, ADHD, sensory processing and the real SEND crisis facing the UK. Section 1. What was actually said? Let me give you the full context here because it really does matter. This wasn't some off-the-cuff remark between blokes at the pub. This was a formal Westminster press conference. Richard Tice was there to outline Reform UK's progress on their new DOG unit, the Department of Government Efficiency. Yes, they have literally copied Trump's naming convention.
So we've just finished the press conference on my Doge update.
Like when Trump creates new policies across the pond, Reform UK, they just warm up their photocopiers. And this is what he said about SEND.
We're calling it out. We say there's a massive crisis of overdiagnosis.
And on ear defenders.
The sight of children in classes wearing ear defenders. I'm sorry. This is just insane. It's got to stop. The teachers want it to stop. The heads want it to stop. It's not the right way forwards.
Lastly, he proposed that the annual EHCP reviews are unnecessary and cost $2,000 to $4,000 a pop. He suggested that they should only happen once per key stage instead of annually. Now, before we dive into why this is wrong on every level, let me tell you about the political context because most of my audience isn't from the UK and might not know that Reform UK currently runs 10 UK councils that are dealing with massive SEND deficits. The County Councils Network projects that SEND debts will reach £17.8 billion by 2029. 59% of councils say they'll go bankrupt when the statutory override ends in March 2028. So yes, there is a crisis, but it's not the crisis that Richard Tice thinks that it is. Section 2, the overdiagnosis myth. Right, so Richard Tice claims that there's a crisis of overdiagnosis. Let's talk about ADHD first, because the data here is absolutely clear. The estimated prevalence of ADHD in the UK is between 3 to 5% of the population. That's approximately 2.6 million people who have ADHD. Now, how many people in the UK actually have an ADHD diagnosis in their GP records? Have a think. Pop your answer down in the comments section below. Okay, you ready? 0.32%. Let me say that again. Only 0.32% of adults in the UK electronic health records actually have an ADHD diagnosis. That means only 1 in 9 people with ADHD in the UK actually has a diagnosis. Does that sound like overdiagnosis to you? These numbers come from a 2023 study who looked into data from over 9.5 million people in the UK via their primary care records. They found that just 30,529 people, that's just 0.32% with ADHD diagnosis, despite 3 to 5% at best estimates having ADHD. The gap between actual prevalence and the diagnosed cases is enormous. And I know some of you are already saying why in the comment section, because I can feel it from here already. NHS waiting times for ADHD assessments are currently 2 to 4 years for children and 3 to 8 years plus for adults. And in some areas, the waiting lists are so long that they've actually been closed to new referrals. This is not the pattern of an overdiagnosed condition, Richard. This is a massive systemic underdiagnosis. If you're waiting 3 to 8 years for an assessment, that is 3 to 8 years plus of struggling without support, years of thinking that you're failing when actually the system is failing you. Actually, you might well be failing too, because years of increased risk for mental health problems, unemployment, relationship struggles, and even involvement with the criminal justice system, it's not a great package. It's not a great package that awaits you if you're unsupported. And all of this is correlated with untreated or unsupported and unmanaged ADHD. Research shows that undiagnosed ADHD is associated with significantly worse outcomes across someone's life. We're not overdiagnosing. We are finally starting to catch up on decades of people falling through the cracks. I'm a late diagnosed autistic adult. I was diagnosed at 42. Before that, I spent my entire life thinking that I was just bad at being human, that I was lazy or difficult or too sensitive or just not trying hard enough. And this is just stuff off the top of my head right now. Getting a diagnosis didn't suddenly give me a condition that I didn't have. I know it might look like that if you're, just looking at the charts. Like, oh, another one's got it. Must be hopping on a TikTok trend. No. It gave me an explanation and, yes, a label that could explain some of the struggles that I've always had. And that label can actually displace or prevent more negative labels from taking effect down the line. Stupid, lazy, stuff like that. And that's true for most late diagnosed adults. We're not jumping on a trend. We're finally getting answers. Section 3, the science of ear defenders. Now, Tice called the sight of children wearing ear defenders as insane and said that it must stop. He claims that teachers and head teachers also want it to stop. Let me be super clear. Ear defenders are evidence-based assistive technology. Over 70% of autistic people experience some form of sensory processing difference. That's not anecdotal, that's established in the research literature. Let me share what actual peer-reviewed science says about ear defenders. The first study I'm going to use is by Pfeiffer et al. From 2019, and that was published in the American Journal of Occupational Therapy, and that looked at the effectiveness of noise-attenuating headphones for autistic children and those with hyperacusis, which is heightened sensitivity to sound. They measured something called electrodermal activity, and that's basically skin conductivity, which reflects the sympathetic nervous system's activation. When you're stressed, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. They concluded, and I quote, "The use of noise-attenuating headphones for individuals with ASD and hyperacusis may reduce sympathetic activation." An earlier study by Ikuta et al. From 2016 looked at earmuffs and noise-cancelling headphones for autistic children who were hyperreactive to sound. Their methods used something called goal attainment scaling to measure behavioural outcomes, but they found that earmuffs and noise-cancelling headphones were effective in controlling behavioural problems related to auditory hypersensitivity, concluding that autistic children could use earmuffs to help deal with unpleasant sensory auditory stimuli. Autistic people, more often than not, but not always, I should add, differ in processing sound than allistics or non-autistics and neurotypicals. When I'm in a large, busy coffee shop like a Starbucks, I struggle to pay attention to the person that I'm with. The busier it gets, the harder it becomes. I simply cannot filter their voice out from the general din. I was always surprised that people can do this. like people can do it. I can't do it, people can do it. Like the espresso machine hissing, the music playing, other conversations, chairs scraping, the door opening and closing, all of that sort of stuff, again off the top of my head. It's just overriding whatever it is that people are trying to say to me. And it's not that I'm not paying attention, it's that my brain doesn't have the same automatic filtering system that, let's say, neurotypical people usually have. Everything comes in at the same level of importance, if not the same volume level. I've often asked friends if we can leave so that I can actually hear them better, and now that I know that I'm autistic and I've explained this to my friends, they are amazingly supportive because they'd rather continue our conversation somewhere where I can actually process what they're saying than just sort of like nodding and smiling and pretending, right? Now, imagine being a child in a classroom. You're in an open plan school with those thigh-high bookcases instead of proper walls. You can hear 3 other classes going on around you. The fluorescent lights are flickering and buzzing. Someone's tapping their pen. Chairs are scraping again. It's always chairs scraping, but you know, they're scraping again. The teacher's talking, but you're trying to differentiate their voice from the general noise. It's kind of challenging. And Pete Warnby, and he's an autistic former high school teacher and the author of the excellent book Untypical, which I have reviewed for Tea and Tales Book Club on this channel, he describes this brilliantly. He says, I suppose neurotypical people have some kind of built-in filter that enables them to tune in to whatever's the most important sound in the vicinity, but I'm afraid I don't have that feature. This is where ear defenders come in. They're not insane. They're not a school joke. They are the difference between a child being able to stay in mainstream education or not sometimes. And they are the difference between learning and constant sensory overload. They are the difference between meltdown and regulation. Would you call glasses insane? Maybe put all of the short-sighted pupils at the front of the class and all the long-sighted ones at the back. Just tell them to get on with it and tough it up, you know, tough it out. Pull themselves up by their bootstraps. What about the deaf students? Should they stop wearing hearing aids? Would you tell a wheelchair user to just try harder to walk? I mean, some of them can a little bit, but it's okay because you will graciously give them a little bit more time. Of course you wouldn't, because that would be disability discrimination. And that's exactly what Richard Tice is proposing when he says ear defenders should stop. Section 4. Teachers wanted to stop. Really? Richard Tice claimed that teachers and head teachers want ear defenders to stop. Let me share what actual teachers and education professionals have said in response. Helen Whitehead is a Labour councillor in Thanet. She's also autistic and a former deputy head of a special needs school. And here's what she said. She says, I think that it shows a lack of understanding about students and what they need. The idea that it should be something which shouldn't be seen in a classroom, which allows students to attend, is an extraordinarily strange statement to make. You wouldn't remove a wheelchair from someone. If I want to function in my area of work, which I do well, this is what I require to make it manageable. Helen is 44 years old and uses ear defenders herself when she needs them. Teaching assistants on social media responded too, such as this one, who said, I work in a SEND school. As a TA, I do not find the sight of children in ear defenders insane. They need them, and there are many in mainstream school that need them, which helps them cope in that environment. Parents shared stories too, like this one. Ear defenders are what stopped my ASD 13-year-old from trying to throw himself off the top of the stairs outside of his classroom. The noise was overloading him. They allow him to be in mainstream school. Or this one. My daughter point blank refuses to wear these at school because she feels self-conscious. So she struggles through the day, trying to block it all out, and then comes home and melts down. So no, Richard. Teachers don't want it to stop. Parents don't want it to stop. You want it to stop. And I think I need to ask why. What is it about seeing children use accommodations that makes you so uncomfortable? Section 5. stop labelling. Richard Tice said we should stop labelling people and just give them a little bit of extra support, a little bit of extra time. I've covered this exact issue before in a previous video about mandatory sunflower lanyards. I keep saying yanlards. Mandatory sunflower lanyards at Wearmouth High School. That's a school that tried to force SEND students to wear identifying lanyards. The difference is, and this is crucial, that diagnosis is not the same as forced public identification. Diagnosis is a private piece of information that gives you understanding of yourself, access to certain accommodations, legal protections under the Equality Act, a framework for self-advocacy, and maybe some connections to community and third sector organisations who can help. But it is always your choice whether to disclose that information or not. And I made a video about the disclosure dilemma too, also linked below if you want to see it. But Richard Tice is proposing something different. He's saying that we should remove the diagnosis entirely and just give a little bit of extra support. Here's the problem with that. How do you tell who is going to get this little bit of extra support exactly? Who are you going to give it to? Without diagnosis, there's actually no legal entitlement to support. That's not to say that a good SEND department won't do their best for you or your child. They almost certainly will do what they can, but the legal entitlements only come with a formal diagnosis. The Equality Act 2010 protects people with disabilities when they substantially affect day-to-day activities. It puts the onus off the students in this case and puts it onto the schools. They have a legal duty to make reasonable adjustments. Otherwise, you're just at the mercy of whatever the school decides to give you. As for a bit of extra support, well, that actually costs money. Tice is proposing cutting EHCP reviews to save money. But on the other hand, suggesting that schools just provide some undefined extra support, which has got no funding, of course, just do that instead. Like, who would pay for it? How do schools know what to support? And like, who needs what support? And what to provide to whom? Like, how do they do it without understanding the student's specific needs? And that comes from the EHCP review. This is just magical thinking. Research consistently shows that late identified autistic adults and ADHDers too have higher rates of anxiety, depression, and possibly suicidal ideation. Why? Because we spent years thinking that we were broken, failing, and not trying hard enough. I'm a late diagnosed autistic adult, and not being labelled didn't protect me at all. I was bullied mercilessly at school. If I wore headphones and a sunflower lanyard, if I wore the sunflower and headphones, I doubt it would have made any further difference to that. I had no framework or understanding to understand myself, and it meant that I internalised every single struggle as some sort of personal failing, and that's really unhealthy. My autistic identification and later diagnosis was liberating for me. It gave me community, a language to advocate for myself, it gave me understanding, permission to stop masking so hard that I burned out over and over. And here's what's like super insidious about Tice's rhetoric. He frames diagnosis as something done to children by adults seeking money or benefits. The National Autistic Society responded directly to this. They say, Richard Tice MP's suggestion that parents are making money from SEND children's needs is a new low. Parents are not profiting from the education system. They are spending time and money fighting against a broken SEND system just to get the most basic support at school. Parents of SEND children aren't getting rich off EHCPs. They're fighting tribunals. They're paying for private assessments because NHS waiting lists are 3 to 8 years. They're exhausted, stressed, and marginalised by a system that requires them to prove over and over that their child deserves support. So if the crisis isn't overdiagnosis, then what is it? Other than all the stuff the National Autistic Society have just said. Let's look at the actual numbers. From the government's point of view. There's a current funding deficit of £6.6 billion, or about 8 to 9 billion US dollars, which is expected to rise to over £13 billion in under 3 years from now. Over 400 people per day are approaching local councils for SEND support, going off of 2024 figures. In the UK, we've had many years of austerity, cutting public services to the point where many services provided by local government has either stopped or become unfeasibly broken. Cutting annual EHCP reviews or banning assistive tools won't fix funding, it just shifts the risk onto the most vulnerable kids. By the way, an EHCP review is an education, health and care plan, and it is a legal document for children and young people that have significant SEND needs from the ages of, 0 to 25. It sets out the needs and the provision required to meet the need, so think like who supports them, how often and where and when, how, all that sort of stuff. It also lists the outcomes that everyone's working towards. This is important because needs, environments and classes change over time. Especially thinking of high schools where even 1 year difference between students, it's a massive effect. It's a huge difference. The plan needs to be checked at least once a year with the family, school and services, all in one room together, having a little chat about it. And these annual reviews are the mechanism that updates provision and keeps the plan legally accurate and enforceable. What supports someone needs when they're 10 or 11 years old, they might not need at 11 or 12 as they transition into high school. Richard Tice believes that these reviews cost $2 to $4 grand a pop, and I'm not sure where he gets these figures from. That's some Whole Foods Waitrose gold leaf coated Brazil nuts there. There is no parent fee. They don't earn anything. The councils don't actually publish a per review charge. Richard Tice might be thinking of legal fees, where parents choose to appoint lawyers to fight for their side, to fight and argue for support for their child. Some legal firms do offer packages to help parents. Sometimes it's just meeting-only support, sometimes it's review packages, or potentially thousands of pounds if they're instructed. These, though, would be professional fees paid for by the parents to a third party, not the council's cost to hold a review. The issue with cutting annual reviews, or having fewer of them, is that the review itself is the built-in legal safeguard that keeps the plan current. And without it, support will just drift out of date, especially when needs or school environments change mid-key stage. And just think for a moment how rapid these changes are. New subjects, new buildings, new timetables, new teachers. Puberty, anyone? Waiting 2 to 3 years risks mismatched provision, which could be even worse than not providing anything at all. Now, my hot take is that this will create a false economy. Problems might not be caught and could escalate. More absence? Behaviour crises? Any school-delivered supports might now be out-of-area supports and therefore cost more down the road. It's cheaper doing it this way. What schools can do that don't cost millions. This bit's relatively easy, actually. This is quite well understood. Schools can create sensory-friendly zones. Any unused or low-used room could easily be repurposed at a very small budget for this. Flexible break times so you don't have hundreds of kids bustling and elbowing each other down noisy corridors multiple times a day. Sorting out some heating and ventilation. Have a rethink about mandatory group projects. Solo work is fine. Yes, please? Thank you, Pete Warmby, for that idea. And as several schools now do, offer access to certain accommodations without needing a diagnosis. It's all fairly obvious stuff that will reduce incidents and improve focus, and that is efficiency. A healthy environment might even mean children won't need specialist support and accommodations beyond those already given. Just think of the savings. Calling accommodations insane, by the way, it's not just like super offensive, it's dangerous. It tells autistic children and their families that their needs are insane, are shameful. It tells teachers that supporting disabled students is also insane, is also somehow wrong. And it tells the public that the real problem isn't underfunding or lack of understanding, but the disabled children themselves. There are kids who need ear defenders, ditching them now to avoid attention and paying for it later at home. That's really unfair and unkind. Over on my Patreon, I posted an in-depth video into the new Conservative Party manifesto, and that's the UK's version of the United States' Republican Party. And I dove into comments made by Kemi Badenoch, the new leader, about all the same points. Slightly different words, but all talking points from the current British right side of politics that's recently decided that employment rights for autistic people and ADHDers should be walked back in favour of employers who they believe shouldn't have to make reasonable accommodations. If you are a member and want to see it, it is linked in my description below. What accommodations do you have in school or college? Probably more likely, do you wish that you had in school or college when you were younger? I wish I had access to headphones. Do you know what? They don't even need to play music or anything, right? Some noise-cancelling headphones. Basically what I'm trying to say is something like the Apple AirPods Pro 3s. I really like these. If these things could have all of the audio features removed, but just be effectively just noise-cancelling headphones for use in educational environments, it would have made the biggest difference to me in the world. What about you? What sort of things do you wish that you had when you were back at school? Very, very gentle reminder to please give the video a like if you've made it this far, and share it with a friend, or share it with your mum and share it with your mum's cat, and give the like button a smack like it's an L Politics take, and Watch this video next on screen for a much better example of School and Send done well. It's actually fantastically encouraging and positive, and goodness knows we all need some positivity in this space right now. Okay, bye for now.